I'm here to kick off my Wind and Truth reading vlog. I think I'm going to do full spoilers for this just because this is the hype right now. Lots of people are reading it, and so I think a lot of people might enjoy a spoiler vlog of this. And so I'm going to share my thoughts. I will try not to spoil anything outside of the Cosmere that's not just contained within Stormlight, because I know some people, Stormlight is the first thing that they read in the Cosmere. So I'll try not to spoil like other things from other books, or at least I'll put a spoiler warning if I do. But there will be full spoilers for Wind and Truth and the rest of Stormlight, including the 2 novellas. So I'm only, let's see, 40 pages into it. So the teeny tiniest little bit into this big book. And we're just kind of getting our feet under us. What I'm really excited about with this book is the structure of it. So at the end of Rhythm of War, a contract was signed between Dalinar and Odium that each one will have a champion that will fight together at the end of 10 days. So when we're opening this, we can see in the chapter headings, or I guess where there used to be like parts, like part 1, part 2, part 3, there's like days. So it'll be like day 1 and then interludes and then day 2 and interludes all the way down to day 10 and the epilogue. So I think that that's going to make for a really interesting structure for the book, is this kind of countdown. I think that's something that I've appreciated in the Stormlight, is that each book has felt like it hasn't had to keep the same structure. Like Way of Kings was kind of like Kaladin and Shallan like had their own separate stories, and then Words of Radiance was bringing them all together. Oathbringer was like some other stuff. Rhythm of War was kind of like the siege on the tower, and then this one seems like it's going to be that getting ready for this big battle. And in the meantime, one of the terms of the contract is that whatever lands each party owns or is like in control of at the end of the fight, they will get to keep control of that. So there's like this awful war that's being waged between Odium's forces and Dalinar's forces to try to get as much power as they can and be in control of as much land as possible before that battle. So we have Kaladin, who's going to be getting ready to go to Shinovar, if I'm remembering right, because he needed to check on one of the heralds that we met in Rhythm of War. And so I'm very interested about that, because that herald, the heralds are not very sane, and that one in particular seemed like a loose cannon, and so I'm excited to see where it goes. So I'm going to read for a while. I'll probably try to update every 1 to 200 pages, just because this is a long book. So I'll just kind of update you when some big things happen and tell you how I'm feeling. Hello, I'm about 10% of the way through, so I thought I'd pop on and just share my thoughts. I thought the first few chapters, it took a little bit of time to get into the story. I thought the writing was a tiny bit clunky, where Sanderson was just kind of telling us that the characters were coming to these like revelations, these like feelings that they were having, and these conclusions that they were coming to based on those feelings. And I've heard some negative comments about how Brandon Sanderson's writing is like getting worse. And I don't know if it's getting worse. I think maybe it's shifting. I'm assuming that this book is going to be very Cosmere heavy. We're already seeing it. We've had nods to one of the leaders of the Ghostbloods, who is connected with another book. I don't want to spoil it in case people haven't gotten there. We've had connections there. We are learning more about Wit, and Wit is all over the Cosmere, and this is just in the first 130 pages. I can't imagine what we're going to be finding in the Sanderlanche. I assume it's going to be similar to the Lost Metal, where we found out a bunch of things. So I think Sanderson is trying to start this novel off by giving this like quick snapshot update. What are our characters feeling? There's not a lot of downtime because almost immediately we find out there's this huge attack of the enemy. I think the Fused were the Heavenly Ones. I get them confused. Coming to through Shadesmar to attack the tower. The beginning of this novel has a very fast pace. And so when we're getting into these characters, we need to figure out where Kaladin is and what he's feeling after it. Adolin and Shallan, what are they feeling? What's Dalinar feeling? Like, we are hitting so many different characters, and I think Sanderson just needs to sum it all up for us really quickly. Like, this is what they learned from the ending of Rhythm of War. And so I do get that it felt a little clunky. Like, I was like, ooh, this is a little rough. If I was writing it, I would do it differently. And I kind of wish Sanderson had maybe changed it a little bit. But I can also understand that, like, this is a big novel in scope, not just in page count. And so I think that sometimes things have to suffer. So maybe, like, the character development, he has to set it up really quickly. So I'm really enjoying that we're getting more of Wit. I think that the ending of Rhythm of War, where he figures out that Odium took part of his memory, and they're trying to figure out, well, what did Odium see? And they don't know that Taravangian is now Odium. So it's really interesting to kind of see Wit being outplayed, because most of the times when we've seen him, he's sort of larger than life, always in control. And I think that's something that Sanderson does really well, is he always can make a threat seem very threatening by how it affects characters that we see as very strong. I'm loving the fact that we're getting Kaladin, who's like gonna be trying to like help Szeth, and I think that that could be a really interesting combo. And I'm nervous about what they find in Shinovar based on what Wit said about Kaladin maybe never returning, and I'm not sure what that means. And that's kind of stressful to think about. Though I think things will be okay. And yeah, I don't know what's going to happen there, but I am interested to see if Kaladin can like find a way to help Szeth, because Szeth has been through so much, and I'm hoping that Kaladin can help him like ease his own guilt and kind of be a good warrior. Yeah, so I'm just starting on day 2. So we're getting there. At the start of book 2, we find out that they're going to have a big meeting to kind of discuss this attack and what's going to happen, like how they're going to try to defend the tower and things like that. So we already feel like we're kind of kicking things off pretty quick, and I'm very intrigued and interested to keep going. I'm page 254, so we're almost down to only 1,000 pages left, which is wild. This book is so long. And I'm really enjoying it. What are the things I'm enjoying the most? I'm really interested about Dalinar going into the spiritual realm and taking on honor. I don't know why I don't want that to happen to Dalinar. It's interesting because as I'm reading it, I'm like, Dalinar shouldn't be the one that does this, which is weird because it makes sense for him to do it. He's the one who's going to battle Odium, or Odium's champion. It's interesting because, and maybe it's because I want Adolin to be Dalinar's champion. Like, I want Adolin to like have his dueling moment in being able to do this for his father, because very clearly in this book there is a schism between them. Like, Adolin has found out that Dalinar killed his wife, Adolin's mom, on accident, but still had killed her and kept it secret from him for a very long time, his whole life. And that schism between them, and with Dalinar's expectations piling up on Adolin just feels frustrated with his dad all the time. He wants to please his father, but he also sees the flaws, and there's this building of bitterness. And as we know, odium likes to take on those bad feelings and have you sort of live in them, and can make them bigger and worse than they were before. And we're seeing Adolin, whose feelings towards his dad are building and building. And what I'm afraid of is that Odium, who is now Taravangian, is going to turn Adolin against his father. And I really don't want that to happen. That would make me so sad, because I want this book to be an Adolin book where Adolin gets to feel like he has a proper place in the world, and whether he becomes a Radiant or not, I want him to be okay with who he is. I love him and Maya, and like, what would that do to her if he like goes to Odium? Like, I don't know what that would, if that would do anything to her and her relationship. I want to be exploring that more, which is hard because we're not in Shadesmar right now, so we can't. We have figured out that Odium has found the loophole in the contract. Odium is trying to attack all the major cities so he can have the entire kingdom, and they're trying to figure out how to stop him as best they can. They only have to hold out for 8 days, and so they're trying to make a plan for not necessarily winning, but just hold out. You know, we don't have to take down the army, we just have to stay strong until the battle, because then once the battle is complete, all the fighting will be over. We just had Navani say that she was going to go into Shadesmar with Dalinar, or into the spiritual realm with Dalinar. That's going to be exciting. I'm so nervous about what's going to happen with that. Wit was saying something about like wells of power and how some mortals have like given it away. And I want to say that was maybe like a hint back at Mistborn, but it has been ages since I read Mistborn. It's been seriously so long. Maybe like 10 years or something since I read Mistborn, and like the whole trilogy. So my remembrance of it is very fuzzy. It was even fuzzy when I was reading Era 2 of Mistborn. I'm probably due for a reread at some point. That was interesting, like an interesting callback, because immediately when he was saying like Wells of Power, it made me think of like Well of Ascension, that book. So that was like an interesting connection. We have Shallan invading the Ghostbloods, which is very interesting. I'm liking getting to see her kind of use her skills, because she's done a lot of like parading around as Vale, and Vale can do all these great things. But now that she's sort of like absorbed Vale's personality, it's her now, and she's doing things, but she keeps realizing that she's not as practiced as like Vale's pretend history is, which is very fun to watch, like someone being like a spy who's not just like super confident, like I can do this, whatever. Like when we're watching Zeth doing something, he's like very practiced, very confident, where Shallan, she's not as much. And so that's really interesting. I'm definitely liking watching her and learning more about the Ghostbloods, because they're connected with a lot of like off-world stuff. They want to be going off-world, and they want to figure out how to take Stormlight off of Roshar, which is really interesting. And I'm hoping we'll learn more about like how that all will work. Very excited about that. And then I'm loving, my favorite part right now is Zeth and Kaladin and getting Zeth's backstory. I think it's so interesting learning about Shinovar and the Shin people, because it's like this whole other side of Roshar that we don't know about really. Like them not wanting to walk on stones because stones are like sacred, and so they like don't even touch the stones in the flashbacks. That's really interesting. And so I'm finding that part really cool, with like the foliage that's completely different from where they were before. And I'm really enjoying that part. I think that's the part that I'm most interested in. I'm just very excited, very nervous, but things are going really quickly. Being 250 pages in, I don't feel like I've been reading that long, and I feel like the pace is at a good pace. We have a lot of people doing things, and so things are moving along really well. Hello, I'm here at the library and I am going to be doing some writing, but I also wanted to do some reading. So I brought along Wind and Truth. I am back to Wind and Truth after taking a 3-week break for Jumpstart January. I am back at reading it and I got a little treat. This is the Marshmallow Dream Iced Latte from Dutch Brothers, and it has supposedly marshmallow flavored milk, and it has Lucky Charms marshmallows on top, and I'm not sure how I feel about it so far, but it is fun to try new drinks every once in a while. I tend to be someone who goes with like the same 3 and I just rotate between them. So I'm going to head inside and just have like a chill afternoon doing some writing, doing some reading, drinking some coffee, and just enjoying my library. Hello, I'm checking in because I'm on page 513 on Wind and Truth, and I had some thoughts. One, I'm loving the like pilgrimage storyline that Seth and Kaladin are going through. I just think is really interesting. Like, we're seeing more of the Radiance with like the honor blades, but we're also getting so much interesting backstory with Szeth and like his teachers and things like that. And we just had the fight with the Else Caller and Nightblood and the other one. I forget what the other one was, but there were like two of the teachers who were there. And Nightblood, so Szeth has said, like, I can't get us out because he's like, he can't make an Else gate to get out. He's never been able to do it before. And then Nightblood just said, but Szeth, you're amazing. And that was really interesting because it made me think of Lift. Lift always talks about like she becomes amazing when she is like using her powers. So I don't know if that like means anything, but I just thought it was really interesting. But yeah, I'm really liking everything that's happening so far. We've been focused mainly on Adolin and Szeth and Kaladin for a while. We just had that really sweet scene with Kaladin and Syl, where Kaladin was doing the kata with her, and then they were dancing and they were going back and forth, and we got the wind that helped him play the flute, and I don't know what any of it means, but it was all exciting and also sweet, and it makes me happy, even though I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of pain later on in the book, and we're at like a happy moment for a lot of our characters, and I don't think that's going to last. I'm assuming as we near the halfway point, some devastating things may happen, and I'm kind of bracing myself for it, so we'll see. But right now, I'm just having a good time. I'm really enjoying just being back in this. Hello, I am 570 pages into Wind and Truth, and I had some thoughts. One, Venli is not my favorite character to follow, though I think I'm liking her a little bit better in this than I was in Rhythm of War. I found it a little tiresome to backtrack so much in Rhythm of War and talk about things we already kind of knew, but what's really interesting is her talking about the Shattered Plains and like the Chasm Fiends and why they go up onto the plateaus in the Shattered Plains to like pupate, like, and she's thinking that there might be something there, which is really interesting. I'm very intrigued in that storyline, and I'm curious to know what will happen next. And then Dalinar and Navani, it's been interesting because when they've been in the spirit realm, they've been talking with the heralds, which has been really interesting because I feel like they're such important characters, but we don't know a lot about them other than that, like, we know that they broke the Oath Pact and stuff, and they're very, like, broken people now. So it's interesting kind of seeing them, though I will say I find it hard to keep track of, like, who's who and what they do and stuff, but I don't think we need to know too much about that necessarily right now, but it is interesting to kind of get their backstory and learn about how humans like came to Roshar in the first place, like fleeing some other world that was like being destroyed. Really interesting. And then it's been really interesting seeing Szeth because he's having all these thoughts about like what is right, what is truth, how do you know what is right? And it's very interesting because the one guy, the general, is just saying, well, you just follow what the people above you follow because they're following the gods and the gods are right. And it's so interesting because we know he's going to get to a point where he's killing because he's holding the stone and he's just being told what to do. And he's not thinking for himself. So it's really interesting kind of seeing that backstory and seeing how he's turning into that person that just kills because they're being told to. And I'm really interested to see where the story kind of unfolds with him as he's kind of learning how to figure out like his own way through life and what he believes about himself and what he should be doing and about, you know, should he use his abilities to kill and protect people, or is all killing bad? It's just really interesting, and I'm really enjoying reading it. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm still a little bit less than 800 pages. I'm nearing the halfway point, so we're getting there, and I'm really enjoying the journey. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to chew on, even though it's not super like active right now. I feel like interesting things are happening, but we're getting a lot of exposition, but I'm finding it interesting. Hello, I'm here with a little update. I just got done doing some sprints with Danielle from Danielle Reads, and I have officially made it past the halfway point. I just got to page 700, and I'm on day 6, and some really interesting things have happened. One of the biggest ones was the interlude where Odium/Taravangian finally decided, like he stopped warring with himself and he finally decided that Dalinar and Yasna like need to be taught a lesson that they're wrong, which is interesting because like right before that he was having this moment of like, these people are my friends and yet I'm against them, maybe I'm wrong, and it's like he just blew past that and he was like, nope, they're wrong and I'm going to teach them a lesson. And I'm really scared about that, and Cultivation seems really scared about that. Loving Adolin's perspective in this story. Adolin is one of my favorite characters, and his relationship with Yanagon, the Emperor, I don't know how you say his name, I've never heard it said. That's been really sweet, like teaching him like how to be a leader, but then also looking out for him and going like, telling the people around him, like, you need to let him have friends. Like, he can't just be this, like, god emperor that you sequester away and stare at. Like, he needs to be a person. Has been really sweet and really good. And there was the one fused that, like, thought he was a Radiant, which was super interesting. And I love Notum, the honor spren, that's, like, they're with him, like, being a messenger now. Like, that whole storyline is just so good, and I really love the fact that we're getting to see Adolin be non-radiant in a world of radiance. It's been really interesting, and I find those chapters so compelling. It was really interesting getting to see the Oath Pact being made. Like, that was really powerful and interesting. And getting to know a little bit more about the Heralds was really good. And then Shallan is kind of figuring things out with, like, Formless, who's, like, still there. Formless isn't gone. But, oh my gosh, I can't remember if I've said anything, but I love Testament, or her little spread. So sweet. I'm feeling nervous. I feel like things have been fairly smooth. I was ready to potentially cry during the reading sprints if we got to a part, but I read 100 pages and I didn't cry, so we're holding strong. But I know the ending of this is going to wreck me. Danielle has also said it wrecked her, and so I'm a little nervous moving forward, but I'm just loving it. I also love Seth's journey through these little, like, mini bosses of the Honor Blades. That's been really interesting. He just did, like, the light weaving one, and it feels like a video game almost of him visiting all the monasteries and, like, having a little almost like puzzle to solve, and it's been so good. And his backstory, oh my gosh, of like all these people who kept telling him, like, you don't know what's right and wrong, you can't decide. And he's like learning like that he can make choices. He, like, that's all we can do in this life is make choice based on what we think is right. And there's no clear answer, and he's finally starting to come out of that, but he wants to kill himself at the end of this, which is like, that's not the conclusion you were supposed to come to. So I'm just finding that fascinating, reading about that, and I so hope that at the end of this book that he just gets to be done killing people, because that's all he wants is his little sheep and to be like a little shepherd, and I want that for him so badly. So I'm gonna keep reading. This is my main focus. We're picking up momentum. I feel it. So I'm just going to keep going on it. Okay, we just got to a seriously interesting part. I just finished day 6, and the interludes in between day 6 and day 7 were like, oh my gosh, they were both so good. So the first one, we were following Diel, who's an Iralian, which we don't know a lot about, which is something I love about Stormlight, is how there are just all these different things happening in the Stormlight, and we don't know a lot about them. Like, even the Shin, we're just learning about the Shin through Seth. So we were learning about them, and there was like the weird portal, and like everyone was like, it's time to go, and they're like leaving Roshar, which was really interesting. And then there were like 3 people there who like know about, I'm assuming Wit is who they were mentioning, who had like left them the letter. And then we get to Odium's interlude, and oh my gosh, he just like destroyed Kharbranth. Like, Sanderson does such a good job at like showing us how terrifying his villains are. And oh my gosh, like, he just killed everyone he loves. He had tried to save Kharbranth, and he just destroyed it. It was also really interesting because Cultivation was definitely going to kill his family if he didn't back down. She had like these assassins that were like going through the city. It's wild, like, getting to see like the Cultivation in Odium and like how they actively play a part in the world was like intense. There's some intense stuff going down, so I'm just like, it was a lot. I'm kind of like reeling from it. It's such an intense interlude, like 3 pages, and I'm like floored. So I'm nervous. I'm getting nervous. We're like, we're getting there. We are fully past the halfway point. Like, we are winding things down, and I am nervous about what is going to happen. So I'm back with a Wind and Truth update. I am getting so close to the end. I am almost on page 900. I'm at 894. I've made it into day 8. So I finished day 7, onto day 8, and day 7 things were happening. So, biggest thing I think that happened, most nerve-wracking thing, was Adolin losing his leg, and we're not 100% sure if it can be re-healed, because I know there's like, they've talked about there's issues with if people believe like the limb can't be healed, then the healing sometimes doesn't work, and things are just bad right now, and so I'm not sure what that's going to be for, what that's going to mean for Adolin. So that was intense, but he beat the Thunder class, which was awesome. And something I love about Sanderson is how, like, he's a little heavy-handed with it sometimes. I was talking about this with Danielle at Danielle Reads. He's very heavy-handed. When he wants you to notice something, he will make sure you notice it. He's talked in the past about how Adolin, like, hadn't beat a Thunderclast, and even when Adolin was going into the battle, he's like, Renarin saved me last time, now I'm here on my own, like, what's gonna happen now? So he ends up beating the Thunderclast, but then it was really interesting because there was, like, such a high price to that victory. Like, him losing part of his leg is, like, a huge loss. So it's so interesting how he's really exploring this idea of, like, you can have, like, a victory in one sense and a loss in another, like, all at the same time. And so then as a reader, we're also feeling that bittersweet emotion along with Adolin of, like, happy that they made it another day, but also, like, what does this mean for him? Like, he was their best warrior out there. Like, what's gonna happen to him? Because he's already feeling like he's outclassed by the Radiants. So what does that mean for him moving forward? And I'm so nervous about it, and I was really worried he was gonna die. So I was happy that he didn't die, but I'm still really sad about him, like, being injured and what that means for him moving forward. We learned about how there was the human and the singer who had been in, like, a romantic relationship, so with Dalinar and Navani in the past, and how Malishi had, like, tricked them to trap Mishram. I'm confusing names now, maybe, but the Unmade trapped her in a gemstone, and we learned that Malishi used to be the bondsmith for the tower, and that's why the tower, like, hated Navani and everything that she did with Fabrials was because Malishi had started messing around with Fabrials and ended up, like, trapping the Unmade, I think one of her siblings, right, in a gemstone, like, forever, and has trapped her in, like, this prison. Oh, I also loved Szeth's Spren coming and talking to Kaladin, going, like, I don't really know what I'm doing. That's interesting. And I don't know. Sometimes I forget things because there's just so many things in these books. But his Spren is not the same as the voice, if I have it correct. So I'm wondering what the voice is. And it's hinted in the flashbacks that we're going to get to know what the voice is. And I'm really intrigued at what's going to be happening there. I'm actually hoping to be able to finish it this week because I don't have a video for Thursday. So I was like, maybe this could be the video for Thursday. Okay, we just had something really interesting happen. I'm on page 914. I'm not that far from where I was when I updated you last, but we just saw, so Odium is messing with Dalinar, and he's showing him when he was beating up Elokar, and Gav saw him, and now I'm afraid that Odium is going to pick Gav to be the champion because Dalinar wouldn't kill his nephew. That would be intense. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that would be intense, and that's kind of where I'm thinking that's leading. Sanderson is not always subtle, but sometimes things really shock me, and that shocked me, and I wonder if that's where he's going. And also, Yasna just found out that Odium is Taravangian, and I wonder if that information is going to help her in knowing what to do. I feel like these updates are getting more and more frequent as we find things out. We're definitely, like, nearing the Sanderlanche, so we're getting some answers, some things that have been being teased for a while. So, we just found out that Nal, the herald that is with Szeth and Kaladin, wants Szeth to become a herald, which is wild, and right now he says he's going to do it, but it's like the exact opposite of what he wanted to do. Like, he wants to stop killing, but he's going to be a herald who will kill a lot, but they want to, like, reset the Oath Pact and, like, fix things, and that's crazy. And also, I thought we had 2 of the heralds had been killed with Adolin, but maybe they weren't, like, killed because the heralds are technically immortal. So far I haven't cried, which is fabulous, but I'm nervous about what's going to happen, especially with Gav. I think that's my big thing right now, is that I'm worried about Gav, and if Odium is going to try to take Gav onto his side. I think that's what I'm scared of, because I think Dalinar would fold because he let down Elhokar for the good of the realm, and I don't know if he would do that again for a child. For Gav, I think he would fold and join Odium potentially. I don't know. Okay, so I just got to page 1100 in Wind and Truth, and oh boy, some stuff happened. So we are getting to see the backstory of Honor and everything that has been going on between him and Odium. That's been really interesting to read. We're getting, like, laid out what we've kind of known has been happening, but we just found out that Mishram has, like, wanted to not be a part of Odium anymore. Like, she hates Odium, and I think wants to, like, save the singers, which is kind of what we're seeing in, like, the present day times. And then we had on the Shattered Plains that battlefield where Moash tried to kill Vienta, and Sigzil renounced his oaths to save her, which was so hard. I immediately started bawling when that happened. I cried so hard. I was in the middle of lunch. I was trying to eat, and I was, like, trying not to cry in my food. I was trying to eat my lunch and enjoy it, and I should know this close to the end of a Sanderson book that that's not going to happen. So I ended up crying a lot, and that was really sad, and we don't really know how much Deadeyes can recover. Like, Maya has recovered some, but we don't really know the extent to which that can happen. So he's, like, completely lost all his powers. He's lost his friend Vienta and doesn't know if he'll ever get him back, but he just did it to save her, and it was so sad. Oh my gosh, just thinking about it, I feel like I'm gonna cry again. Yeah, so I'm going to be trying to finish this today and tomorrow. I'm going to try to read. I now have, like, 213 pages left, so I think I can definitely do it. I'm just going to be setting aside a lot of time for reading, and I think that there is a lot of pain left for me. I think I have 40 pages until day 10, which is the big day, and we still don't know what's going to happen with Dalinar. He's supposed to be the champion, but he doesn't have Honor's power like he thought he needed to face Odium. And we know that, like, the gods fighting creates horrible things. We learned that Shattered Plains is from Honor trying to fight Odium. So I don't know what that means for if Dalinar tries to fight Odium with Honor's power. Like, what would that do? Oh, I just feel like we're at such a low point, and it means the stakes are very high, which means I'm very invested, but man, it's hard. And I feel like, Sanderson is doing such a good job at just making these, like, awful villains that seem unbeatable, and I don't know how our good side is going to do anything about what's happening right now. Hello. So, I made it to page 1188. I have been reading quite a bit today. We have an ice storm going on outside, so our windows are, like, completely covered with ice, and it's snowy and super icy. There's, like, a sheet of ice covering everything outside. So, I'm going to stop here for tonight, and I'm going to finish it tomorrow. I've been playing chicken with the book because I wanted to get as far as I could, but I didn't want to hit like the Sanderlanche. Like I didn't want to get to a point where it was going to be really hard to stop. So I was at a point that was a little hard to stop at, but I think I'll be okay. I'm on day 10. We've learned about what Nail and Ishar are doing and how Zeth is going to try to stop it, and maybe Kaladin is going to try to like bring Ishar back because he's like the insane herald who is like murdering Spren because he's trying to make them come into the world with like a physical form, which they're not supposed to right now. They can't really do that very well. We're a half hour away from the duel. Dalinar has no idea how he's gonna win. Wit doesn't know what's gonna happen. Odium seems nervous because Odium doesn't know what's gonna happen. And Shallan, I think, is going after Mishram to try to let her out because with her having some of Odium's power, that might have something there. There might be something there that can help, but really, I don't know how everything's going to resolve, and it's been really tense. I haven't cried yet since Vienta, but I was almost crying when Adolin was on the front lines with the shield and the spear, and he doesn't have his leg. He has a peg leg, and he's like out there. It reminded me of all those Bridge 4 scenes of like these men who are facing down death, and it was really tense and nerve-wracking. And where we left off is actually with Adolin without a blade dueling the Abidi monarch fused with a full shard armor, shard plate, and sword. And I don't know what's gonna happen. I want Maya to get to him somehow, even though like it's lined with aluminum, so she maybe can't, but maybe she can. I don't know. I was thinking like maybe if he said oaths, like could that make him a radiant to like help, but he's in an aluminum room, so I don't even know if that would do anything. So it's really tense, and I have like 150 pages, like almost exactly, that I need to finish tomorrow. I will definitely be doing that, and I think I'm going to be heartbroken when it's done. I just feel like it's not going to end well. I know that the story is not going to end, and I'm nervous about where we're going to stop, and that it won't be enough. And then I'm going to have to wait like 6 years to read more. Whew. Hello. I am coming at you from a walk with my dog. We got snow that is somewhat melted now, but the sidewalks are very icy, so I'm having to walk like in the grass next to the sidewalk so I don't slip and die. I finished it this morning. Boy, that last 150 pages was a wild ride. I was like playing games with my parents this afternoon online. I was trying to remember everything that had happened so I could tell you guys about it. And so much has happened. So we had the big fight with Dalinar and Odium, and Odium's champion was Gavilar, who had aged 20 years in the spiritual realm and had been mind poisoned to hate Dalinar and want to kill him. And Dalinar wouldn't do it. I was so concerned about that decision because Sanderson did such a good job of setting up the issue that was Taravangian Odium wins no matter what. And so we had what was maybe the hardest part for me to read, which was Dalinar taking on Honor's power and then renouncing it, stripping him of all of his power. His bond to the Stormfather's broken, and then he died. And I was so sad. I didn't really cry in that moment, but I did later, like, as it kind of sank in that Dalinar's dead. But then Taravangian, like, finds the Blackthorn in the spiritual realm, and now he's gonna be on Odium's side, like, as the Blackthorn, like, the worst parts of him, which is just, that's so sad and so stressful, and I don't know what that's gonna mean for things later on. Adolin's plate responding to him and coming off of Abadi the Monarch and flying to him and just yelling, "Sir, sir!" That broke me. I was crying so hard about that. Oh my gosh. That was the cutest thing ever. We got Odium taking on Honor's power since Dalinar had freed it. But Dalinar did that because once we have a new god formed from the 2 shards, suddenly all the gods in the Cosmere, all the other shards, are looking straight at, what is the new god? It's like vengeance, but not. I can't think of the word. They're all looking at him, and suddenly he can't just bide his time, plan, get ready to take over the Cosmere. He has to act now. And that's so interesting because now we kind of know in the next Mistborn series, like, we might have a full-on clash of shards in the Cosmere happening soon. And that's just so interesting. And it feels the scope is so much bigger than anything I've ever read before. And if you watch my Rhythm of War video, when I said Rhythm of War might be my favorite book, which it definitely was my favorite of the 5, it's the scope of the Cosmere. It's so vast. Like, what happened on Roshar has massive consequences for the rest of the Cosmere and the rest of the characters in the Cosmere, the other series. Like, big things are going to happen. Like, Cultivation fled Roshar. Where is she going to go, and is that going to create issues with other shards? Oh my gosh. And then we had Kaladin become a herald, so he saved Zeth from having to become a herald. Talk about another moment where I sobbed. That was so, I did not see Kaladin becoming a herald. I thought Kaladin, with his talking with wind, was gonna take on Honor's power. That's what I've sort of thought this whole time. Had no idea that that was gonna happen. But something interesting I did think about was when we were talking with Ishar and they were like reforming the Oath Pact, I was reminded that the reason I have to have 10 is because that's like a holy number, a perfect number. It has to do with Adonasium. And there are going to be 10 books in the series. And I wonder if that was purposeful, which it probably was, with it being Sanderson. So I thought that was really interesting to think about. Wit was a Dawn Shard. Like, holy crap. We don't even know what they do. But that feels like a big deal. And he gave it up to Sigzil, who lost to Vienta. Luckily, Vienta's okay, but she hates Sigzil, and that is almost worse than her being okay. In some ways, it makes me so sad. She doesn't want to be with him. So, Wit gave up his Dawn Shard. So now I think there might be like 3 Dawn Shards on Roshar, which there aren't supposed to be. We found that out with Rhysand. There aren't supposed to be that many Dawn Shards, so he told Sigzil, like, get off Roshar, you need to get out of here. Odium cannot have the Dawn Shards, which is interesting because we don't know what they do, we just know they're powerful. But it's like, okay, this is like a big deal. and Shallan got stuck in Shadesmar, which is crazy. So I just thought it was so interesting. I love this setup for the next book. Like, we are where I projected we would be. We're at like the low point in this series where it feels like things can't get worse. So I definitely see why Ghostbloods needs to come next, the next Mistborn series, because Roshar is in like this weird time bubble. Months will have passed for them and only a little bit of time will have passed on Roshar. So, and Wit said that there was something crazy happening on Scadrial where Mistborn takes place. So we're gonna deal with that, and then we'll be ready for like the big stuff to happen, because Roshar is Odium slash honor, and things are not looking good. Adolin's in a good spot. He was able to win his fight, which was amazing, and he's feeling good about himself. Though I realized, like, he never got to make up with his dad. Not really. Which is tragic. I just love this series. And this book was so good. I think the writing was a little rough at some points, but I think when you have a 1,300 page book, you're not going to be able to go over it with a fine-tooth comb. So there are going to be some points at which it's weaker. So I do hope moving forward, he'll either take a little more time to go over things, or just write shorter books, slightly shorter books. Because I think that would improve the writing. There's a lot of repetition in these books about the characters' thoughts and feelings. In fact, I thought that the character arcs in this book were kind of just repeating what they had learned in Rhythm of War. And I didn't feel like we were crossing new ground, except with maybe like Zeth and Ishar and Nail, maybe some other people, but really we were just solidifying everything that we'd been learning with the characters in the previous book, specifically Rhythm of War. Navani's frozen in a coma with a sibling. That makes me sad. I almost forgot about that. So much happened in those 150 pages. It was insane. So I think those are all my thoughts. They're kind of rambly. A lot happened. I was very emotional. I love this series. I think it's great. I think if you don't like it, I totally get why. I get all the faults, but I love it. I love how Sanderson will give us what we want from a book. He's like, you want the battle with Dalinar and Odium, I'm going to make it a duel that you don't know how he's going to get out of. And I'm going to get out of it in a way that's both emotionally damaging to us, the reader, and to the characters. And it's a huge cost. Dalinar paid with his life. He hurt the Stormfather. He gave up Honor's power. But he also did it for a reason, and we're not going to get to finish. We're not going to get to see the results of Dalinar's work immediately. We're going to watch it grow. Like, Kaladin gave up being on Bridge 4. He's on a new team, the Heralds, and he has such important work to do to, like, help these people who have been mentally and emotionally tortured for millennia, thousands and thousands of years. And he's going to try to help them come back in some sort of way and be more mentally stable and try to save the world when they come back. And it's just so cool. Like, I don't know any other series that can end like a halfway point like this in such a satisfying way while still leaving so much open that we want and need to see from the next arc. And it's going to be a totally different series. Like, we're gonna have Spren, but there's no Stormlight. So, like, he's changing so much. And it's just gonna be really cool to see where it goes. So, thank you for sticking around. I know this is kind of a chaotic video. I hope you enjoyed my cool winter walk and talk. Hopefully the noise from the road wasn't too bad. Thank you for watching. If you have read Stormlight, please comment what you thought about it, because I know this kind of divided a lot of people. If you haven't checked out my other reading vlogs, a lot of them are fun. I read a lot of fun books and you should check them out. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.